I'd like to introduce our final breakout speaker, Richard LeDuc, Vice President of Sales at Helpside. Richard is a big deal. He's bold, innovative, and gritty. He also focuses on implementing and improving the sales process. Previously, he was Senior Director of Business Development at MarketStar, where he was responsible for the global Facebook, Google, Dropbox, and Asana revenue strategies. Please join me in welcoming Richard LeDuc.
That was very good. I offered Beth $20 if she could make me laugh by making up my introduction. She did a pretty good job. That was pretty good. I told her it'd be funnier if, like, she said, like, I was a chimney sweep and had a Cockney accent and whatever. But so it's nice to see SUU that is here. And it's nice to see Utah State that is here. I attended the BYU until I got married. And then per the marriage agreement, I could no longer attend BYU. My wife hates BYU, so we went up to Utah State. Is there anyone else? University of Utah, SUU, Utah State? Utah Tech? Oh, fantastic. All right. You got my son. He went toward your campus, and I'm not using this. I'm already using the microphone. Towards your campus. He did it during the winter time, so now he's going to be going to university. It's a good time to tour it. So there are a couple of things. Here's my little thing. When you think of salespeople generally, this is usually what comes to mind as it relates to salespeople. Now, I am a sucker. I've been in sales for about 20 years. I'm a sucker for salespeople. I'm no longer allowed in my home to answer my door because I buy whatever it is, because I am sympathetic to the plight of the salesman. It's a difficult job. And the salesperson, I'm sympathetic to it. So we live up in Layton, Utah, and I have like 7 Layton Lancer cards, right, from dance team and from football and from basketball. So now I have, 5% off of a Subway sandwich and 14% off of aluminum siding on my house, and I have 7 of those cards, and I've never used any of them ever, and I pay $50, and I'm a sucker, and that's why they always come to my house. Now, I started off, I was a biology and health science major in school, and I have used that 0 times in my life. The majority of you are business majors, right? Like in some capacity or another. Do you guys know how many of you will likely go into sales? Does anyone know what that stat is? We shouldn't have moved. Yeah, sorry.
Me too, 58, I don't know.
Yeah, sure. 58, sounds good. It's pretty close. If you have the slightest movement, I will pounce. My presentation isn't too good, as you can obviously tell, and I need audience participation. So the slightest movement, and I will see it, and I will pounce. So 58, sure, it's close. It's of college graduates, it's over 50%. Of business majors, it's much higher than that. So do a little exercise. Look to your right. Look to your left. Statistically, 100% of you are going to suck at sales. So the number isn't, that's not quite fair. It's actually 99.6% of you are going to be terrible at it. And by terrible, I mean it's 1 in 250 that exceed their sales targets. That's the number, right? I'm sure you're different. It's for other people. It's the person to the right and the left, not you. Certainly not you. And so one of the things that was a bit of an eye-opener for me, because I got my master's at the University of Utah, and I never took a business class. I was, taking other biochem, organic chemistry, right, stuff like I said you use every day, and I didn't have the ability to speak in the language of business. And so I attended the University of Utah and got my MBA and learned quite a bit. And there was this aha moment that I had. I was in an operations class. So in academia, right, there is a general level of snobbery depending on the type of thing that you are researching and studying. So at the highest levels in business, you have the strategic management and the organizational behavior folks, and there's some others, and then marketing is just down here, And then sales doesn't exist, it's down here. And people look at sales kind of like it's this and don't take a very systematic, process-oriented approach to selling. So I was in an operations class, and we were learning about the proper way of managing capacity for the manufacturing of widgets or something, right? And what rested upon my mind was this idea of taking more of this process-focused approach to sales. A lot of the reason that people are terrible at sales, there's lots of reasons, a host of variables, but there's a lot of subjectivity and kind of anecdotal examples, both in training and in the way that people go and they do the work, right? I remember when I started in my sales career, I started working for a defibrillator company because I had some sort of biology background, right, health science background, and so I was selling defibrillators. And then from there, I got a job working for a glove company. The PPE world, as it relates to gloves, is about a $21 to $22 billion a year industry. I would tell people that I was in latex and allow them to draw their own conclusions in terms of what it is that I actually did. But I go to this big sales meeting, and there's this big Todd Feeney guy. Or maybe that might be his name, I don't know, to protect the innocent. Maybe his name was Todd Feeney, maybe it wasn't. He was a big tight end from Michigan State, and he was the salesman of the year. Crushed it, like grew insane and it was just awesome, right? Hawking a lot of rubber gloves. And I went up to him after the meeting, I'm like, Todd, that was impressive numbers. I had just started. So like, what do you do? How can I be like you, right? And he's like, oh man, you just gotta get out there, you just gotta work hard, And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Get out there and work hard, Anyway, so in the waning 24 minutes that I have left, I want to talk about sales process and the importance of you as a potential salesperson in understanding sales process. I think I have 73 slides. We're going to get to about 6 of them. And so I teach here at the university. I teach sales and business development in the Master of Business Creation program. It's an awesome program. University of Utah is just amazing, especially on the entrepreneurship side. We have a lot of startups. Every year we have 20 to 25 new startup companies that come in. And what happens, though, with them is that they have an idea and no idea how to actually, bring it to market, right? An idea is not a product, and a product is not a business. We say that all the time, right? So how do you bring something to market? So one of the things, I'm going to start with stuff that's pretty boring, and you're saying, you already have. And I say, you know what, shut up. So we're going to start with stuff that's mildly boring, and then we're going to get slightly more interesting, and then we're going to end pretty boring. It's not for everybody, but it's my style, so this is what it is. So how many of you are familiar with CRMs, customer relationship management tools? The majority of you are. Salesforce is a big behemoth, right? So here's a slide with a bunch of them. Here's a bunch of the big ones. Salesforce is great. They're all great. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. I'm doing some research stuff with Fresh Sales right now, so I have a particular bias toward them. I think they're swell. So just by nature of an organization or a company using a CRM, just using one, you're going to have a significantly higher conversion rate than companies that do not, right? Just because you're more cognizant of it, you're more thoughtful about it, right? In terms of individual sales quotas, close to about 32% increase, right, over the average, versus over the company over whole, 41% increase, right? So just by the nature of having some sort, and by CRM it means, you've got a place where you're putting all your customers, you're kind of tracking stuff. This isn't even like how effective or efficient. This is that you're kind of actively using it, that you're in it a reasonable amount. That means you've got some sort of process. By itself, that's going to improve your overall sales conversion. So here's a bunch of boring stuff. So let's go to, Paul did an amazing job talking through value proposition, right? It was really, really a master class in terms of helping you to understand what that is. In sales, you have, a whole process. Let me go to a customer journey here. So here's an example of a customer journey. And what you need to understand as a salesperson is each point here is a potential interaction or connection with a prospective customer or client, right? And because each of those is a prospective interaction, it has the potential to go poorly, or at least not process through, not to be able to convert it, right? And the better that you understand, so this is my first bit of advice to you in any sales capacity, understand the customer journey and sales process, like really understand it. Then the next step is as you're engaging with a prospective customer, you know that these are all of the different spots where you're hitting them, where you're trying to engage with them, right? And understand, because of this, and again, this is just this is for a company that I worked for, and we were trying to, map out the customer journey. Why are we losing here? Why are we not converting from this stage to this stage? To go back a slide, right? You start off with a nice prospecting thing, and it just kind of funnels down, and you're losing people along the way. Why are you losing them? What's happening? You can't even ask those questions if you don't even understand what the sales process is. It's hugely important. In fact, for me, I've hired lots and lots and lots and lots of salespeople in my career. And for me, when I'm talking to a prospective new hire, I want to understand what their sales process is, how they engage, what they do, right? It becomes a fairly easy math problem then, right? Where if I have a sales target of X and I know what the conversion rates are, then I know that in terms of sales activity, I need to do Y, and through that entire process, I'm going to get my result, right? Just getting in there, you just got to work hard. I mean, sometimes, right? Like there's this idea of conscious competence that I know what I'm doing and I know why I'm being successful. And then you've got unconscious incompetence, where I'm an idiot and I don't know why. And the next, so that's the worst, right? Because what can we do for you, right? There's very little we can do. Good luck getting a career in medical sales, by the way. The next worst, though, is conscious incompetence, in that you're performing, but you don't actually know why you're performing, right? That sucks, because the end of the year is going to come, and you got to do it again, right? And you don't know what you did, right? So how much time do I have? Just 17 minutes. Okay, exactly the amount of time that I needed to get to. I'm going to skip through a couple of things pretty quickly. This is a mildly interesting story that we don't have time for. Sales is about matching the right problem with the right solution, with the right people, the right message at the right time. And I'm simplifying this a lot. I understand. A lot of times people want to say that this is the thing you have to do. That's overly simplified, right? It really is. That said, this is the thing that you have to do. Because any time that someone isn't purchasing something from you, it is likely because one of these things isn't right. One of these things isn't going well. And when you understand the sales process and you understand the opening speaker on empathy, right? Understanding the customer's perspective, where they're coming from, the things that are the most important to them, what their process is like, what their purchase process is like. I would argue it's far more important for you to understand the purchase process of your prospective customers than it is even for you to understand your own sales process. Because then you understand where the gaps are as it relates to these particular items, okay? There's three things that I like to in an attempt to try to simplify. I talk about identifying the problem, quantifying the value. If we had a little more time, I would spend more time on the quantification of the value proposition, right? Oftentimes, my world is in the business-to-business space, right? If you're selling business to consumer, it's a little bit of a different sales approach, certainly. But I think that there is one of the biggest flaws that exists in business-to-business sales is a lack of quantification of your value proposition, right? Like features and benefits, like as have been talked about, right? And by the way, I was features and benefits guy when I started my sales career. When I was selling defibrillators, I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, selling to some union hall. They needed 2 defibrillators, and I was just like literally rat-a-tat-tat going in, you know, slices, dices, does your taxes, like just ba 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 ba, just like all these things. I hit on something that he liked. He's like, yeah, okay, we'll take 2. And I was shocked that he wanted it, right? Because I was just coming in just vomiting all of these features and benefits, right? Less effective, although I did sell 2. So, you know what, maybe I overcame it just because of my charisma generally. But so if you identify the particular pain point that they have, and we're going to talk a lot more about gloves. I'm so sorry that you're going to miss out on that. Then really quantify what that value proposition is. When you're selling to a business specifically, so I will share this, right? So nobody cares about gloves. Nobody cares. Like not one single person cares. So I sold in the medical space. I sold into a lot of different spaces. And I worked for a company, Ansel. And toward the end of my career at Ansel, I was over our global automotive aftermarket space. So we had huge clients like Napa Auto Parts and AutoZone, and we also sold to a lot of small distributors. And we sold through wholesalers as well. So it was a 3-step distribution. That's boring, it doesn't matter. But when we would go into a particular distributor to sell our product, we would go in, and people would go in and they'd show their product, and they'd pull. By the way, talking about, you know, hoping that something works, right? My first ever sales call working for this glove company, I go into the place. It was a bakery in North Ogden. And I go in, and I'm like, oh, no, they're great. And I pull on the glove, snaps and breaks immediately. Just immediately. And I'm like, never. I literally said, never mind. Turned around, walked out the door. Spoiler alert, didn't get the sale. It's great. Literally, my first alone sales call, it was a disaster. It was awesome. My general philosophy, by the way, is you want things to be great, and if they're not great, you want them to be a total disaster, because at least you get a good story out of it, right? So think about that when you're getting married and it's a total disaster, right? It's like, hey, you know what? It's a good story in 20 years. So what we did is when we'd go in, we used the fact that they didn't give a crap about our product to our advantage. How did we do that? What do small businesses care about? Making more money. We did this huge focus group and this huge research project. It cost us tens of thousands of dollars to do this research. Turns out, companies want more top line, more bottom line. Who would have thought that that's what they would want? So when we go in, we actually developed an entire program where we would do these huge sample blitzes to all of these companies. And so we sold in the automotive aftermarket spot, and we'd sell to an automotive aftermarket distributor. And they would sell to body shops and mechanic shops. And so we would say, we'd go into them, and if we went in and talked to them about gloves, they didn't care. And oftentimes, people don't actually care about your product. I think Paul did a really good job describing this when he talked about getting the job actually done, right? And the job done for many of these distributors was making more money, right? So plus gloves made up 0.25% of 1% of their total revenue. So if you didn't care about gloves before, you sure as hell didn't care about them as it relates to making money. Didn't matter. So what we did was we used their apathy to our advantage. And we developed this program where we'd go into them and we'd say, we'd love for you to convert your current product to our product, right? As an example, if you go anywhere, you can find Reese's peanut butter cups. They're delicious. They're fantastic. By looking at me, you know that I eat a lot of them. They're wonderful. But my favorite candy bar is a candy bar called Wonder Bar. It's in Canada. It's made by Cadbury. It's delicious. It's fantastic. Can't find them anywhere. But Hershey's, Reese's, these guys have done a great job managing distribution, squeezing out competitors. That's what we wanted to try to do with gloves. And since they didn't care about gloves, we were able to use that to our advantage because we were able to show them how using our gloves helped them to make more money. So when we go in to a particular client or distributor, we'd say, we're going to do this huge sample blitz. We're going to send free samples of our product to all of the customers in your area. It's going to drive them in. We're going to do a buy one, get one too. So they come in, they buy a case, they get a case free, and it's going to be fantastic. And we did a couple of pilots, and we saw, when we did this huge sample blitz, that we sold a lot more gloves. But nobody cares about gloves. What we found is that we increased their monthly overall revenue by 1% to 2%, selling all their other stuff. Now we got their attention. Now we're talking about the thing that they really, really care about. And I wasn't talking about gloves ever. When I would go in and meet with a potential distributor, I talked about gloves for 5 seconds. I talked about their real pain and the real value that we're going to provide them. It was fantastic, right? So I want to go to, let's go here to the end, because I want to try to provide you something that you could do, as a salesperson that provides value to you right now, okay? So I'm currently finishing my PhD at Oklahoma State. Go Cowboys. We have Oklahoma State. No, okay, no Oklahoma State people. Okay. It's a great school, great university, and it's in marketing is the PhD. It's the world I'm in. Finishing my dissertation right now, and so that's when I said we're going to bring it back down. We're going to talk about my dissertation. That's what we're going to talk about. You're like, you know what? That sounds terrible. You know what? It is. So let's talk a little bit about. There's a great quote, Abraham Lincoln. If I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend 6 hours sharpening my axe. You know what? It's pretty good. I think there's big things coming for this guy. I think he's going to do good stuff. I have a similar quote. My quote, if I had 8 hours to make a cold call, I would spend 8 hours thinking of something to do other than make a cold call. Because cold calls suck. How many of you have or make cold calls in your job? How many of you have done that? Scale of 1 to 37, it's like a 48 for crap, right? It's the worst. It's just awful. There's lots of reasons why it sucks. One of the reasons is because you're interrupting somebody in their day, and you feel like a 5-second YouTube ad where you've got to try and get their attention before they hang up with you or make up some reason to get off, and it's just awful and it's terrible. I do some consulting for other companies, and it's a fun gig. You go in and you identify some problems, and then you give them some solutions, and then maybe they work or maybe they don't, but they pay you anyway, and then you leave. It's a sweet gig. I highly recommend it. I went to go work for a company, and they had business development reps, and they're making cold calls and doing their things, right? So here's some stats from this particular company. They just started the company. They've been doing it for about 4 months. Okay. So discovery call, or like a set up an actual appointment, they called it a needs audit. Guess how many cold calls were made to schedule one meeting with a prospective customer? How many calls do you think? 50? Okay. Think of worse numbers than that. 262 calls to schedule one appointment, right? Now, in the course of about 3 months, they scheduled 27 appointments, which is over 7,000 calls made. And of those 27 appointments, they closed one deal. So we've got a team of 3 BDRs calling 50 to 60 times a day in 4 months to close one deal. Average deal size, 7,500. We'll make up for it in volume, right? Wow, rough. It's a rough gig. Now that's terrible. Other companies are better at it, but cold calling is a brutal game. It's a brutal gig. So how do you improve prospective buyer engagement? So these are things that you can all do. If you were in a sales role, you could do it right away, right? So cold emails, some stats on cold emails that I think are interesting. So here's some general averages, some general stats on stuff. So cold email, average click-through rate about 2.5%. Average conversion rate from that click-through rate about 2.3%. So that means on average, now some companies are much better than other companies, and I'm sure whatever company you're talking to, I'm sure they're different. They're different and smart. It's great, right? But on average, you're closing a deal per roughly 1,700 emails sent, right? That's pretty good. Now that's why, now with marketing automation, there's a lot of software tools, right, where you go in, outreach and others, where you go in and you're just like friggin' sending 4 gajillion emails and you're gonna land some deals. And you absolutely will, right? The average person in the United States receives somewhere between 100 and 200 emails a day, right? Now, as Beth said, I'm kind of a big deal, even though none of you have heard of me before, obviously. That was the one that made me laugh. That's why I'm going to send her 20 bucks, because she did make me laugh at that. That's funny, because I'm not, obviously. But you'll have a circumstance where you'll go into a company, they've got this process, they're sending all these emails out, and it's fine. But if the average person receives 100 to 200 per day, then your problem isn't just, let's say you nail what Paul said, right? The value proposition is tight and it's awesome, and you're going to save them $1 gajillion, and it costs almost nothing, or it's free. It's the best. My favorite thing is when working with startup companies where they're trying to give their stuff away for free and people still aren't taking it. They need to take a page out of Mark's book and put a for sale sign on it maybe, and then maybe someone will steal it. But that's my favorite. That's very funny. I mean, not funny for them. Their lives are being crushed. But their hopes and dreams are being shattered. It's terrible for them. And I'm very sorry. But so if the average is 1 to 200, I mean, I teach at the University of Utah. I have a real job that pays me real money because the University of Utah doesn't. And then also through I've got a consulting business, and then I've got my Gmail that I sign up for, all the stuff that you sign up for when you don't actually look at it. So I probably get about 300 to 400 emails a day, right? It becomes just an avalanche of emails. It's overwhelming, right? And so how can you cut through the noise, even if your value proposition is so amazing, right? So why do people do it? Why do people do email campaigns? Because the ROI is awesome, because it's practically free. So your ROI is 200 to 400% on an email campaign, even though you're converting 1 deal per 1,700 emails on average nationally, because it's relatively free to do it, right? So that means in the case of cold emails, less effective, but more and more companies are doing it more and more. Direct referrals, it's the best. It's the best, right? Like, if you can have somebody, a client, customer, someone in your network, go to somebody else, say, Avery, oh my gosh, you gotta buy this. This is so freaking great. And Avery's like, I mean, okay. And then maybe she does. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't. The stats on direct referrals are pretty good, right? People buy stuff from people that they know. And there are some things that I buy that I'm super evangelical about, like that I love, like it's the greatest thing in the world, and I talk about it all the time, right? And the conversion rates are really good. These are kind of national averages on conversion rates, on just general stats for referrals. What's the problem with building a sales strategy solely around referrals, do you think? Takes too long? Okay. What else? It's a pretty small funnel, and also people don't do it. Like, there's an academic study that was looking at about 82% or so of people will say that they're going to refer somebody, and only about 30% of them actually do it. So 11% of salespeople ask for referrals, which that's a huge problem in and of itself. About 80% say they'll do it, and then 30% actually do it, right? So, perfect, 3 minutes. That's exactly how much time I needed. So that means that you're getting, if you have about 100 people that you know, right, you're getting about 3 referrals in something like that. It's a pretty small number. So my research is specifically around implied referrals. Now, direct referral is amazing. Cold, everything sucks. What's an implied referral? An implied referral is I know Avery. Avery knows me. I don't know Beth. I ask Avery if I can name drop to Beth. This is something you do all the time. We're trying to explore it in a more academic setting. One of the biggest things that you have is your connections in LinkedIn. You have a lot of connections. It's one thing to connect to somebody, it's another thing to know somebody. There is more value in actually knowing that particular person. There is great strength in networks. And if you come into a sales position, I recommend not making cold calls. We're expanding our current company. We're expanding to Arizona. And I talked to a sales rep just this morning. Hey, what do you want me to do? I was thinking about making cold calls. I said, I'd rather have you take a nap than to make cold calls, right? I want you to do this particular thing. So so here's some stats, right? The average person has about 300 connections. Now, as students, you have far fewer, right? But the connections that you have likely more. You can go through that and identify people and companies and then ask for name drops. I did this. A friend of mine, Freddie Ashby, he has 266 companies or people, connections in the area, in the ideal customer profile that we're looking for, right? And we did this with another one of his people, Landon, 200 and something, right? Now I've got a list, now I've got emails, now I've got contacts, now I'm engaged with them in a way where I'm doing name dropping of Avery said I should reach out to you, right? And the key to that is, what we're finding in the research is that, they might not buy your particular product or service right away, but they're at least going to give you the opportunity to do the thing that Paul said. And that initially is hugely valuable. So as you develop a sales process and then work at, implied referral is one example of a prospecting thing that you can do that if you do, can make you incredibly valuable to your organization as a salesperson and help you to be one of the 0.4% that exceed their sales targets. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.